Hi, hello, welcome to another episode of Man with a Mentor. I am the man, your host, Matthew Barnard, and you may be wondering what a show called Man with a Mentor may be about. And basically, it's about people who have fascinating careers and all the little steps and things they did to make that dream of theirs that they had in their head a big success. And one of those people I have with me today. And she is named Emmy Buttrick. Hello, Emmy.
Hello, it is such a pleasure to be with you today, Matt. I am so excited. Thank you so much. It's really an honor.
Oh, you're welcome. Oh, it's not really that much of an honor.
Anytime anyone wants to talk to a crazy comedian, it's an honor.
Right. Yeah, I think those two things do tend to go together. But I do want to read something quickly about you so everyone knows like who you are and what you're up to. So I'm going to say Emmy Buttrick, the succubus of satire, is the Harvard-educated pinup model featured on the Betty Page podcast and now stand-up comedian and improviser. Having recently sold out shows in New York City, she brings her delightfully dark twist of humor to crowds all over the country. How's that?
That is true.
Oh, that's good. And actually, we're doing this via Zoom, and this is the first via Zoom I've done by somebody who's like on tour for their job. You're in Las Vegas. They're doing gigs, right?
Yes, I'm currently in Las Vegas. I spent the past couple of days doing open mics because that's what we comedians do to get to network and learn other comedians. Essentially, how you get gigs is by going to different markets, and how you do that is by going to open mics. It's essentially like an audition in a way. And I did that back in February, did really well. So now I'm here, got a book show, hit more open mics to meet some more great groovy people. And I'm here going to have a show tonight at the Backstop Sports Pub and Grill. It's called the Laugh Stop Comedy Night.
Oh, that sounds like fun. There's so many.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like more bars per capita in Vegas, I think. So you were in the right place. You could probably do one every night for 6 months and never get them all.
That's why I love markets like this. It's, I'm based out of Columbus, Ohio, and to where I get to go to play New York City. Every week there's 220 different mics. It's an embarrassment of riches. So if you want to go and work on your craft, if you are able to go to the larger comedy cities, I find it invaluable because the amount of repetitions in Columbus, we have 1 or 2 a night, potentially. And your markets like New York and LA, they start at 11 a.m. and they go until 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
It's just an amazing way to pretty much just, in a sense, like get in the gym and really work on your material. Because I think people believe that it's just like being clever or funny with your friends. And actually, the most of stand-up is done before you ever hit that stage.
Right. Yeah, I want to talk to you more about that. But I want to go back because I'm kind of all about like what happened in your noggin that led to these ideas that percolated, and as you grew up and your family and your education and where you lived and all that like you think influenced you, or maybe they were none of those influences and you just became your own person and you said, I want to do this, I want to try this, and what age that was and when it started to happen.
Well, I was raised in a family that loves comedy, absolutely positively loves comedy. My father didn't spend a lot of money on himself, very hardworking man, but one thing he always made sure that we had was an HBO subscription. So every single Friday when the stand-up spotlight was on, I watched the specials with my dad.
Oh, wow.
And every single Saturday when we would get up, and instead of Saturday morning cartoons, we would watch on WOSU PBS all of the British comedies. And that was my Saturday morning routine growing up. It was getting up, going and getting blueberry donuts with my dad and watching all of the BBC shows on PBS. And then we would watch the only cartoon my father felt worth watching, Looney Tunes.
Right. No, I think you might be right
my
there.
Saturday morning routine.
Right. And I love blueberries too, so I think we're all connected somehow. So when did that like start to become something where you're like, can I do that too? How do I do that? Where do I do that?
Interestingly enough, I loved comedy at a young age and stand-up. When I was 14 years old, I actually saved up my allowance money to buy tickets to see George Carlin.
Oh, right.
And clearly I was raised right because my parents knew where I was going and they dropped me off. And they dropped me off, picked me up, and then I saw him again at 17 years old. And at that point in time, I had a job and was working at a gas station, and I bought it with my paycheck. I was always just fascinated with spoken word, language play. I think Carlin's really well known for his use of dirty language, but in all honesty, I know him and I think he's more of an expert in the English language and his extrapolation and expansion of it. The broadening of one's vocabulary that you could master just by listening to George Carlin. I honestly think between my public school and my library card and being heavily influenced by George Carlin is the reason why I have an extensive personal lexicon myself.
Right.
You're not going to find more of a linguistics master than him. So I was very influenced by him.
Right. I mean, don't you feel like some of the best comics are some of the smartest people out there? I mean, because you're crafting stories with a beginning, middle, and end in a way that's supposed to entertain people. And that's not as easy as just it flowing out of your mouth and you haven't thought it through. It's difficult.
Yeah, there's a science to it. When we hit the stage, we want to get a laugh at least in our first 30 seconds, if not before then. I'm a comedian that works on laughs per minute. I'm trying to get you laughing every 30 to 40 seconds.
Right.
There's a methodology to it. You have to have hooks and tags, and there's a science, but at the same time, the theater of coming in and doing that and making it look effortless and just like a casual conversation I'm having with the audience.
So it sounds like your family was very supportive. How did they feel though as you like went out of teenage years and started going to thinking about school and studying? Were they like she'll just do this every month, or she's not gonna think about this as career? We're gonna get her to be a engineer or a teacher. And did you say, like, were those in your mind, like, yeah, I'd like something stable? Or were you like, no, that's not for me, I don't think?
I've only been pursuing stand-up comedy full-time now. It was actually 2 years was my anniversary yesterday. It was my 2-year anniversary. I actually started in LA at the Hollywood Comedy. For me, in all honesty, it was a life-changing moment. I lost my brother to acute myeloid leukemia, and I gave the eulogy at his funeral. And for years, I had it in the back of my mind to potentially maybe do stand-up or something like that. And my brother was a really wonderful guy, and I had to include some humor in his eulogy because he was just a funny guy. He was very young. He was only 39. And after I got down from the podium and the pulpit and did his eulogy, there was just this moment of, well, you realize now you have to live for both of you. And if you can do that, comedy will be really easy.
Oh, right. So what did you do between like high school, college, and like 2 years ago? Like, where were you? Like, what space were you in?
I am the succubus of satire because I am a clinical vampire.
Oh.
I have a very rare autoimmune condition. I'm actually studied for extensively by the Cleveland Clinic. I have a rare autoimmune condition that makes me blood products dependent. So effectively, I am disabled, though I do work. I work in politics, and let's just leave it at that, considering what our political divide right now.
Right.
In politics, doing various works from organizer to policy wonk, those sort of things. That's my day job. And I've been pursuing comedy seriously now, stand up for 2 years, and let's hope that will turn into a full-time job.
Right. Are there any more... So are there any worries in your mind? Like, am I going to make good money at this, enough money to live on? Am I going to get seen? Am I going to have a stand-up special? Is that my fate? Or like, do you just like keep going blinders on and see what comes? Or do you have a plan of progressing?
If anyone is doing this for the money, please let me get you out of that and disabuse you of those delusions.
I can imagine.
You will not make money quickly, but if you do listen to the amazingly generous podcasters out there now, like Bill Burr, who does his podcast twice a week, he very openly tells stand-ups it took him 8 years before he could pay any of his bills doing stand-up. It took Ron White 12 years pursuing stand-up before he could actually pay all of his bills with it, before he didn't need a day job. All these people that we consider overnight successes were typically at it 8 to 15 years before we actually started to know their name.
Right.
So if you're in this for money, or you're in this for fame, or a quick Netflix, special, it's not going to work. You have to be in it for the love of it. I'm in it because I have something wrong with me that just makes me want to get up in front of people and just be an agent of joy. I want to take people away from their problems for a few moments and make you laugh and make you not forget and not remember what your worst was. I want to be a little bit of a reprieve from your everyday. And I think that's why comedy is so important. I feel it's very healing.
Right. No, exactly. Do you think there's more or less pressure, like as you go from like unpaid open mics and trying to get your feet wet to like people saying like, oh, come to our venue. We want to hire you to do comedy for our company event or at this place or that? Is all of a sudden you're like, I cannot bomb doing this. I've got to be good. And then you feel that pressure, or is it less pressure because you got people entrusted in you that you know that you're funny and you'll be great at being up there? Or are you always scared that you could bomb at any moment?
I think any comedian, if you don't have a fear of bombing in the back of your mind, you're a little delusional. But you have to walk through that fear every single time. Frankly, I don't really think, am I going to bomb? I don't get in my head about it. I just think, am I going to give the audience the best time I possibly can give them? And of course now, I've been hired now as a headliner, and I know people think, oh my gosh, she's only 2 years headlining. In my political work, I do motivational speaking, and so I have a long history of public speaking dating back until 2012. So that's why I'm able to formulate a longer set than someone that would be traditionally just 2 years into this. 2 years into this, you can normally do 10 to 15 minutes. I'm comfortable doing 40 minutes completely clean comedy. That's not normal, but I also write every single day without fail. And to do that and to know that 90% of what you write, you're not going to use. It's just the exercise of getting the mind working, getting those, ideas percolating, setting on them, working them, and then workshopping them, taking them to a mic, seeing how they play. Oh, wow, they did really well. Okay, well, now I've got another audience. I want to take that across town or across the country, a totally different demographic. Is it universally funny? And then that's when you know you have something. It's one thing to formulate the idea. Then you go and workshop it. Then you present it. If it's good, yes. And then, okay, can we take that to the bank? Is it good in LA? And is it also good in New York? And is it also funny in Wheelersburg, Ohio? Because I play all those places.
What do you think your particular niche is? You said you were doing clean comedy, so that's amazing, because so many are like, my ears are burning, falling off, and walking out the door.
Yeah, and I love those comics and I appreciate them. But for me personally, it's just me. I personally love the challenge of trying to say something very naughty and very dirty, but say it in a way that if there are children in the audience, they're not going to understand at all what I'm saying. But the adults in the room will understand perfectly clearly. And if you craft it in a clever way, I mean, that's what makes it funny. If I were just to go up there and say whatever the vulgarity is that I'm trying to express, well, yeah, I might get a laugh or two. But if I'm able to paint you a picture of it and tap dance around it in a way to where now I have you visualizing it and thinking in your head, and I never said a word, and your kid's right beside you and he has no idea why you're laughing. That's my sweet spot.
I do want to ask you about the relative few female comics. Like when you go to an open mic, there's like 14 people, and sometimes you're lucky if you see 2 girls up there. Like, does that bug you? Does it make you feel like I'm going to stand out, so stay away, girls? Or do you wish there was more like, 8 guys, 6 girls? Like, how do you, what do you think? Why do you think more women don't go into it? Do you think it's a nature of the business, or do you think it's more of a guy thing?
Stand-up, especially because I started in improvisational comedy, stand-up especially is male dominant. It always has been. Female comedians only make up 13% of comedians. And mostly that's because as a female comedian, we have to, as soon as we get on the stage, we're fighting the stereotype of women are funny. Because there is a large portion of the audience, both male and female, that just don't think women are funny. Oh. That's just, no matter what you do to that audience, they're not funny. You just won't be, because you don't have the anatomy that they think that you need to be funny.
I know.
And
whenever I hear that, whenever I hear that, I always like, it makes me go, and then I don't believe, like, I can't believe it. I don't understand it. I mean, do you understand it? Explain it.
I do understand it because I've had to understand it intellectually, because to me it makes no sense in my personal life. But if I were to sit back and understand it, women in our lives tend to be our mothers, which are an authority figure. Right. And women in our lives tend to be our teachers and our nurses, which are part authority figures, part caregivers. So our mothers. So I think the typical feeling that we have when a woman is like talking to us or telling it like it is, even if it's comedic, I think some people have a feeling of thinking, oh, that's another lecturing woman.
Oh, right.
So even when it's comedic, all they hear is their mom's voice going, oh, yeah. That's what they hear, the rhythm. They don't necessarily hear what you're saying. So you become almost like a Charlie Brown teacher, and just the annoying female voice. So I find most of the time you're not fighting against their stereotype, you're fighting against their past childhood traumas. It's like their mom and they like their schooling. Typically they like female comics. If they can't stand their mother, or they had a problem with authority in every class that they went to, and well, the majority of teachers are female, then typically they don't like female comedians. I found that to be true.
I think comedy is tough, because if some people can say like really like outrageous or sexist or ageist and things that are funny, but you would never say around the dinner table or and they can get like almost canceled out for that. But then they can say, oh, well, I'm a comedian, that's just saying things to make people laugh. And then you wonder like, oh, okay. But you wonder like, is that like a thought in their mind for real? And we don't know. And so it's a tough line to dance in this modern world we're in.
Well, I can say as a comedian, when I'm on stage, unless I'm talking about my actual personal life and I don't do a lot of storytelling, I just feel like that's been a little overplayed in the past 5 years in comedy. I want you to leave with something that you can tell your buddies at the water cooler on Monday morning, like, oh, I saw this comedian and oh, this was a joke, and it's a setup and punch and it's a quick. I do have small storytelling bits within my larger sets, but you don't, like, I think how Ron White does it so brilliantly, like Drunk in Public, that set is over 11 minutes long. That's a storytelling bit. You have to be a master to do that. An absolute master, because that payoff has to be extraordinary for that. Where I want you laughing every 30, 40 seconds. I'm a more setup punch kind of comedian. I want you holding your sides.
Right. Well, you're punching me right now. In a good way. I want you to tell people about your social media and where they can find out about you and where you're headed and all that stuff, so people can find you and see you at the next gigs and next month, next year, and keep up with you.
I am at Emmy Buttrick on Instagram. Emmy, just like the word Buttrick, Buttrick. So Emmy Buttrick on Instagram and Emmy Buttrick on Facebook. So yeah, just follow me on my socials. I'm always posting shows and flyers with the ticketing links, and would love to come see you. Month of November, I'm quite literally, I start the end of October in Cincinnati, and I end November in Bangor, Maine.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say I've loved talking to you and sharing stories about comedy and your influences and how you got to be like sitting where you are today. And I want people to look you up and go see a show and enjoy yourself. And I want to thank you, Emmy, for being with me here today on my show, Man with a Mentor. Thanks for watching or listening. Thanks, Emmy.
Thank you so much for having me, Matt. It's been a complete honor and pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.